is Obert Gutu. I'm the MDC-T national spokesperson. Yes, the biometric voter registration system, it has caused a lot of, I'll call it excitement and at the same time anxiety for obvious reasons, because this is a new system that is being introduced in Zimbabwe for the very first time. The BVR system has been used in other African countries. I think they've done it in Cameroon, in Ghana, in Tanzania, Namibia, and several other countries, even in Zambia. So this is the very first time that it is being introduced in our country, in Zimbabwe. And obviously, this is why it has aroused so much interest, so much anxiety, and also even so much excitement, rightly so. As the party, as the MDC, led by Morgan Tsvangirai, we are actually at the forefront for calling for the BVR. If you remember, we have always been calling for electoral reforms. Ever since the MDC was formed in September 1999, we have been calling strenuously, vigorously so, for electoral reforms, because as you know, our elections have been always marred by issues to do with unfreeness, unfairness, issues to do with violence, issues to do with manipulation of the voters' roll, issues to do with vote buying. Ever since the MDC came onto the scene, right from June 2000, when we participated in our very first elections for the National Assembly, we have always had those issues to do with the unfreeness and the unfairness of the electoral playing field. So we are actually the pioneers. I can safely say the MDC is one of the pioneers calling for the adoption of a more reliable, a more authentic, and indeed a more transparent voting system. And we believe that the biometric voter registration system, if handled professionally, if handled carefully, is actually the answer to most of the voting rigging shenanigans that we have been suffering from in this country. So as a party, we are obviously excited that finally the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission, ZEC, and even the Zanu-PF government have given in to our demand for at least part of the electoral reforms as shown by the BVR tender that was recently awarded to Laxton Group Limited for the supply of BVR kits. But as you know, that is not the end of the story. I would say that is just the beginning of a very long journey. It's the beginning of a very long journey. Why? Because the supply tender for BVR kits is a very small issue, because we're also talking about issues to do with the central system, the computer software that is going to be used to go hand in hand with the BVR kits. And that is really another very critical aspect, to say when you buy the kits, you also want to buy the central system. Who is going to run the system? Who is going to provide the software? Who is going to do who is going to provide the servers for the system? Who is going to provide backup services? How is the information that is going to be recorded on field when people are being registered? How is it going to be transmitted to the central, or rather the main server? So all those issues are really pertinent. That's why of late there's been a lot of news items, news stories carried by you guys, the media, around the BVR issue, because it's a very topical issue. And if we are not careful, if we don't handle it carefully, we can actually go back to the horror of 2013, i.e. an election that is run in a very, very unfree and unfair environment. So as the MDC, this is why we're pushing to say the BVR kits company, or rather the company that was awarded the tender to provide the BVR kits, should commonsensically be the same company to be awarded the tender to provide the central system. It's like when you buy a brand new car, if you go to Mazda Motors and you buy your Mazda BT50, brand new, you expect your engine to be a Mazda BT50 engine. If you find a Honda Fit engine in a brand new Mazda, or vice versa, then it gives all sorts of problems. Once you buy something, you want to buy a complete unit, not to get it in bits and pieces. That is really our main bond of contention about the BVR. Otherwise, we are overly happy with the new system. But in our happiness, we are also sad, because we are very worried that ZEC is now talking about coming up with a second tender for the central system. But we are saying they should have done it as a wholesome issue. When they did the tender for the BVR kits, they should also have floated a tender for the supply of the central system, because those two, they go hand in hand. They're actually so symbiotically connected. You can't have one without the other. So that's our main concern, really. Ndosaka tiri kuti isu sebato reMDC rinotungamirirwa naMorgan Tsvangirai tiri vanhu vakachenjera. Pari zvino takavhura meso, takavhura nzeve, nekuti hanzi chakachenjedza ndechakatanga. Tinoziva zvakaitika muna 2013, takarohwa nezveusiku, tikaziva kuti vanhu veZEC ava havasi kunyanyotrasta, nokuti chinonesa ndechekuti ivo pachezvavo makomishina zeZEC vangangova vanhu vakanaka, vangangova vanhu vane tingati muchirungu integrity. vanhu vanovimbika ma-professional people, vamwe ma-lawyer, vamwe ma-accountants, vamwe ma-engineer, vamwe vangosiyana-siyana. Saka hativashorise vanhu in their individual capacities. Asi dambudziko ratinaro nderekuti ZEC tinoziva kuti pane rumwe ruoko rwatingangoti muchirungu a hidden hand runomanipulata kana runoda kubvongodza muto weZEC kuitira kuti veZEC havasiriwo vanezenge vakurana election inenge yakuranwa nevamwe vanhu vari kuseri vatisingaoni, the hidden hand. Ndo patine dambudziko ipapo. Ndosaka tichiti se-MDC isusu kana tichiti toda kuti election ive free and fair, tiri kuzviitira nyika yeZimbabwe, hatisi kuzviitira isu se-MDC chete. Toda kuti munhu anenge ahwina kana kuti bato rinenge rahwina rihwine zviri pachena, vanenge varuza varuze zviri pachena. Haudi kuti kana uchitamba mutambo, ungava mutambo wenhabvu, ungava mutambo wecricket, ungava mutambo webasketball, ungava mutambo kana werugby, woziva kuti rugby toziva tinotambwa navanhu 15, ukaziva kuti isi timu yedu ina vanhu 15 asi opposite team ina vanhu 20, motoziva kuti muri kutamba an unfair game. Handiti saka teida kuti game ratinotamba rive game riri fair, ahwina ahwine zviri fair, arohwa arohwe zviri fair. Ndo dambudziko ratinaro chete rokuti hatisi kuti ZEC ngaisaita basa rayo kana kuti ngaiite madiro edu ayo. Tiri kuti ZEC ngaiteedzere zviri mumbumbiro romutemo. It's a chapter 12 institution, an independent commission in terms of chapter 12 yebumbiro romutemo weZimbabwe. Ngaive ine masimba okurana election iri pachena. Kurana election yekuti hatizoti mangwana voters roll haina kuitwa nemazvo, nokuti hatiri kuti tiite zva2013 takapinda mu-election day musi wemugovera 31 July 2013 tikanovhota pasina voters roll yabuda. Zvino zvangofanana kuti unotamba mutemo munhabvu usingazivi kana kuti referee ndiani, kana kuti usingazivi kuti tichatamba nhabvu ye45 minutes here kana kuti tichatamba 5 aside football. Unofanira kuziva kuti usati wapinda munhabvu mitemo yenhabvu yacho yemuchatamba yakamira sei, kuti uzive kuti kana wakugadzirira unogadzirira uchiziva. Zvino ndo dambudziko ratinaro neZEC, kuti ZEC ine vamwe vari kumashure, the hidden hand inoda kuvhiringidza ichida kuvati vabude mugwara rekuti vanhane ma-elections ari pachena. That is our main bond of contention with ZEC. Lovejoy is an election that passes the test of legitimacy. In other words, an election that the winner will win fairly and the loser will lose fairly. An election where the playing field is even, where the voters' roll is there for all stakeholders. At least 30 days before the election, when the voters' roll is closed, all the stakeholders, the political parties involved, if there are independent candidates involved, civic society, any other stakeholder who might have an interest in the election, they should actually be in such a situation to be happy with the election, so that whatever the result, it won't be challenged. Like I said, that is really the benchmark, or the main benchmark of a free and fair election. You don't have an election like what we have in Zimbabwe, where, for instance, the media, it's good that you guys in the private media at least give us space as the opposition. I will not have this kind of opportunity to go to ZBC TV, for instance, and say what I'm saying today. We are denied that. So many times I've engaged the management at a very, very high level at the Zimbabwe Broadcasting Corporation to say, why don't you give us an opportunity to come there to your studios for live programs, even recorded programs, so that we tell our story? Because the only story that we hear when you listen to ZBC radio stations, the 4 radio stations, is a Zanu-PF story. When you listen to the main news bulletin, the news hour bulletin, every day at 8 p.m. on ZTV, you hear the Zanu-PF story. They never tell the story of the MDC or the story of other parties. We're not saying just the MDC, but we are several political parties in this country. I'm told there are about 54 or even 55 opposite political parties. So we are saying, in terms of the constitution, we should all have equal and unfettered access, at least to state-controlled electronic and print media. But that is not happening. Let's go out there in the rural areas. Opposition supporters, they are denied food aid. They are denied access to inputs. And these inputs are bought by taxpayers' money. So these are the issues that we are raising. To say, simply because you are an opposition supporter, either known to be or suspected to be, you are victimized on that basis. So we are saying, how then can we have an election run in those circumstances. More so, let's look at the role of traditional leaders. The Sabukus, the Sadunus, even the chiefs, Madzishe, they are literally commandeered to form part of the Zanu-PF commissariat department, so that when it is electioneering time, the traditional leaders become de facto Zanu-PF activists, whether they like it or not. They have to ensure that all their subjects in their villages, in their areas of jurisdiction, are commandeered, literally, to go and vote for Zanu-PF candidates. I mean, is that the election that we want? So we are saying an election should be able to give the participants equal access to the electorate, and should also give the electorate a free and unfettered choice, so that you are not compelled or forced directly or indirectly to cast your vote for a candidate whom you might not like. But sometimes people are compelled to vote for candidates because they say, if our candidate loses at this police station, we are coming for you. We'll check you out of the village. So what does a villager do? He or she will say, okay, I have nowhere else to go, so I just have to play ball. So these are some of the issues. I mean, we're talking about when you talk about the unfreeness and the unfairness of the electoral process in Zimbabwe. It's not that we are being crybabies. We are just being honest, patriots who want Zimbabwe to be governed by a legitimate government, not a government that gains power through the back door or through unpopular means. No, actually, if, they go through a torrid time just securing a birth certificate. Never mind the national registration certificate, just to have a birth certificate registered. Some people might be staying several, sometimes even hundreds of kilometers away from the nearest district office, in the rural areas. That is where people go, birth certificates. But you find that there are some districts that are very far-flung. If you go to areas like Binga, you go to areas like Gokwe, where perhaps you have to travel like 150, 200 kilometers to reach your Mujiti's office, to reach your nearest district administrator's office, where you are going to be able to get your birth certificate. And the people, look, they don't have money for transport, and sometimes those areas, they're actually inaccessible. There's no transport. The roads are so bad, there are no buses, servicing most of these roads because of the bad shape of the roads. So you find that children grow up into adults, even up to my age, without having had a birth certificate registered, let alone a chitupa. Because in most cases, you only get a chitupa after you get the birth certificate. So those are the issues that we are saying. Let's provide mobile units. The Registrar General's office should go out there, particularly the outlying areas, where it's difficult for people to access registration facilities, to make sure that the preferable situation is that at birth, each and every child should have a birth certificate issued, like what happens in the so-called developed countries. I don't think there will be any problem there. In just making sure that birth certificate so that if we have units going out there in my villages, we don't have the problem that we have now. Even here in the cities, you'll be surprised. If we go to Mavuku right now, if we go to Mfakos, if we go to Mbare, even to Highfield, you'll be surprised that thousands of people don't have birth certificates. They don't have national registration certificates, but they are Zimbabweans, born and bred in this country. So when it comes to voter registration, obviously, you can't even prove that you're a Zimbabwean, because one, hauna birth certificate, two, hauna chitupa, and the other issue that you have raised, which is also very important, which I'm going to comment upon, is the issue of the need for proof of residence to register as a voter. That is actually a very contentious issue. It is a notorious fact that most of our people, particularly here in the cities, Harare, Bulawayo, Gweru, Mutare, Masvingo, Chinoi, wherever, most people they're tenants, they're lodgers. And, for you to be able to have access to a utility bill, a bill for ZESA, or a bill for the rest from the local authority, it's not easy because it's only the homeowners. And imagine if you're a tenant and you want to register, you have to go and say to your landlord or landlady, bill utility bill register. It now depends on the whims and fantasy of the landlady or the landlord. If they are not too comfortable with giving you that, or if they just don't want, they won't give you. That's why as the MDC we are saying there should be a simple affirmative process where there is just an affirmation. You just affirm to say that I live at house number 213, Rusike Street in Zengeza 4. That should be enough for you to be registered. You've asked a very good question. If we are talking of a biometric voter registration system that is efficiently run, you'll do away with that issue of double or triple registration. Because biometric features of a person, they are unique to a person. My biometric features are unique to me. Biometric features of Obert Gutu are unique to me. My face is unique to me, even if I had a twin brother or a twin sister. My fingerprints are unique to me. No other person will have the same kind of fingerprints like the fingerprints that I have. So that's why we then say the scientific aspect of this system will do away with that problem. To say, if I then try to register multiple registration, my biometric features, they'll say, oh, look, we already have these details. We have this face. We have these fingerprints. The system will simply reject to say, no, already registered, if it's properly run. So that's the good thing about biometrics, because biometrics are person-specific. You can't duplicate them. They are person-specific. Because all that is under the jurisdiction of ZEC. ZEC should actually be the constitutional body mandated with that aspect of, monitoring the issue of voter education, monitoring the issue of voter awareness. The Constitution gives them the power to do that. So right now, there are a lot of problems because ZEC has not even started that issue of voter conscientization. But we know that already we are waiting for the supply of the BVR kits. And they say that it will take about 90 days. So who knows, maybe by the end of July or end of August, the BVR kits will be landing in Zimbabwe. But we haven't had ZEC out there on a voter awareness campaign to say, this is voter education, this is what you need to register. To start with, they should simply now be talking about, please make sure kuti une birth certificate. Make sure kuti une chitupa. So that is the only proof that you are a Zimbabwean. Otherwise, how can you prove that I'm a Zimbabwean if I don't have a birth certificate, if I don't have a national ID? Someone can come from Rwanda, from Burundi, from Equatorial Guinea, and say I'm a Zimbabwean. I mean, if you don't have those particulars, how can you tell a Zimbabwean from a non-Zimbabwean? So I believe that if ZEC was sincere, this is what they should be doing right now. I'll give you an example of what is happening in the villages. Out there, where we come from, where I come from, for instance, there has been a propaganda, stunt taken by Zanu-PF, Zanu-PF activists, who are already telling the villagers there, kuti makamera achauya, avati makamera ezek, hanzi makamera ezanu. Makamera ezanu achauya kuzokutora mipikicha. Saka zvose zvinenge zvichiitwa munenge mutorwa nemakamera ezanu tobva ziya kuti chiso chako ndechipi, mafingerprint ako toenda nawo ku head office yezanu kuHarare. Saka already there's this information, and the ZEC is not doing anything about it. We've brought it to their attention that this is what is happening. Villagers are already terrified. So that when this BVR voter registration system starts, already villagers out there, Kumamisha, they have already been given wrong or misleading or false information to say, makamera ezanu. Avachati makamera ezeki no, hands makamera ezanu. So that they instill fear in you. But ndikatorwa nekamera ezanu, then I have to vote for Zanu. Or otherwise, if I don't vote for Zanu, they'll come for me. And you remember, people still have those memories of 2008, the violence of the presidential election runoff. People were killed in cold blood, women were raped, houses were burned down, livestock was stolen from people, and the perpetrators, almost 10 years afterwards, they are still walking scot-free. So people are still living in fear. And this regime, the Zanu-PF regime, is actually harvesting from that fear. Because these days, they don't even have to beat you up. They'll simply remind you, June, Gorelia. You tanga kungofunga za June 2008. Woga unongorwa nehana wodedera kuti rega ndingoita zvavanoda vanhu panoti ndizopondwa nokuti zvichiri mupfungwa dzavanhu asati zvabuda. That's the other problem we have yokuti when people vachinge vacommita macrimes kana munhu achinge apara mhosva ngaasungwe vanhu vaone kuti hapana munhu anonzi ari above the law, kwete kuti vazoziva kuti vazoona vamwe vanhu vakarova vanhu vakauraya vanhu vachifamba vari free vachiti isu hatisungwi nokuti tiri vezanu. Saka chero tikaita zvatinoda tinouya tokuuraya, tokurova, tokutorera mombe dzako, mbudzi dzako, mangarukona ako, huku dzako, hapana zvatinoitwa nokuti ndisu mashefu. So all that creates fear in people. These are some of the issues that we are raising. How then can we have a free and fair election if we don't deal with these hygiene issues, if I may call them that? It's important that we deal with these hygiene issues. Yes. I would enthusiastically say yes. But the danger we have is we are dealing with a very untrustworthy partner. in the form of Zanu-PF. It's the partner whom, if you are dealing with, like they say, you know, you always have to keep your eye up, one eye open. Even if you go to sleep, when you're dealing with Zanu, don't close both your eyes. Because when you wake up, you find maybe even your pillow stolen. So I mean, this is the kind of partner that we are dealing with. We have to be very, very alert. Why we say so is there is already an apparent plan out there that they are rolling out to try to hijack the BVR process. You remember the noise that they made when the UNDP, the United Nations Development Fund, it actually provided funds for the purchase of the BVR kits. We all know that the government is broke, that the National Treasury is bankrupt. But what did they say? All of a sudden, Patrick Chilamasa came, guns blazing. Said, no, Ministry of Finance will finance this. Treasury has the money. But we're saying, where is the money coming from? When everyone knows that you guys are broke. It's a public secret that you are broke. The National Treasury is broke. But because they realize that if they don't control this system, they won't be able to control the vote rigging system. So that's why I'm saying the BVR is not going to be like the panacea for our electoral challenges or electoral problems in this country. There's need for the will to run a free and fair election. You might have a BVR system which becomes contaminated, which becomes manipulated. Already here there's a big issue about who is going to supply the central system to run with the BVR kits. Already, ZEC was not genuine enough or honest enough with stakeholders. Now they are saying we're going to float a second tender for the central system. But when everyone else was led to believe that whoever was going to maybe win the tender for the supply of the BVR kits will be the same company that will be given the latitude to provide the central system, the central computer system to go with the BVR kits. So this is the kind of problem that we are dealing with. We're dealing with a very, very dishonest partner in the form of Zanu-PF. Like I said, let me not say, the blame is not so much on ZEC. Sometimes I feel pity for the commissioners at the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission. I know most of them personally, they are reputable professional people, but they are put under so much pressure by the regime. They are put under so much pressure that at the end of the day, they might end up just giving in to demands. So we are saying ZEC should not only be, free and independent. They must be seen to be free and independent from executive control. I mean, that's the whole idea of a Chapter 12, institution. Otherwise, if they are going to play to the whims and fantasies of Zanu-PF, then we are not going to have a free and fair election because they will just have terms and conditions of running the election dictated to them by the regime. And this is what some of us in the MDC have been fighting against. To say ZEC should not only be independent, ZEC should be seen to be independent.
For these and other stories, visit our website www.263chat.com. Follow us on Twitter @263chat and like our Facebook page 263chat.